Hello my lovelies and welcome back to my channel. Today I am sewing a strike off for Oh So Pretty, and since I haven't done a sew with me sew and chat kind of a post in a few weeks, I don't want to say month because it will sound horrible on my part, I figured I will do one today and chat with you while I'm sewing this strike off. So for the next round, from round 79, I have this stunning, look at this gorgeous stitch panel that is the blanket topper, an adult size, which is approximately 2 yards by the width of fabric. And I have another one that, oops, let me turn it, that is going to be on the other side of the blanket. So I don't have any main print. I have two toppers, but honestly, like I told Kelly the other day, I prefer blankets with two toppers versus a front with a topper and a backing with a main print. Honestly, this is my favorite kind of blanket, two big toppers. I adore this print. Okay, so let's get into it a little bit. I'll give you a couple of tips. I'll show you how to sew my blankets super quickly. I don't spend a million years spinning and cutting and whatnot, but I will give you some tips if you prefer to do that. For our friends who are new to sewing custom plush, I wanted to show you how it looks like. So on the back, come on, focus. Okay, so on the back, it's white, it's always white, but it has a beautiful soft plushy feel. On the front is the main print. The feel on the front and on the back is exactly the same. As opposed to Minky, this one stretches like really well. Let me back up a little bit. So as opposed to Minky, plush stretches super well. See? And it stretches on both directions. See? Minky does not do that. Minky does not stretch. So plush or double-sided Minky is great for garments too. It's so soft. My kids love pajamas. When it gets cold, the occasional few days when it gets cold, my kids love their plush pajamas or loungewear because it's super soft. I find plush way nicer than Minky, but again, it's personal preference. I know a lot of people who prefer Minky versus, let me grab, since I keep saying Minky and I'm not sure if all of you are familiar with Minky, let me grab a little bit of Minky and I'll show you. This is a Minky from Hissy Fit. It's super soft on one side, but on the other side, if you can see, it's shiny-ish. It's not plushy on both sides. So Minky, it's soft on one side, but it's shiny, like flat on the other side, and so it's not plush on both sides. This one requires a backing for sure, or a lining if you use it for any kind of outfit. Whereas plush, I have so many blankets that my kids just use like this, a topper. I really don't do anything to it. I get a topper, put it in the wash, I give it to my kids because it's soft on both sides. I can get you here. See, on this one is plush, this one is Minky. I don't know how well you can see, but plush is soft on both sides, so it really doesn't require any lining, whereas Minky does. And if you want like a heavyweight, good for sensory kids, heavyweight blankets, I definitely encourage you to go for plush. If you want a lighter weight blanket, Minky does the trick. some people find plush harder to sew because it stretches. However, if you sew knits, then I don't find it any more difficult than sewing cotton lycra, to be honest with you. If you sew only woven and all of a sudden you buy a blanket topper in plush, yes, you will feel the difference, but it's not hard to sew. And I'll show you my easy tricks to make this quick, fun, and super adorable. So grab 2 toppers, 2 adult toppers. I place them right sides together. Just make sure that your designs, because see, there is a demarcation line on the selvage, and there's sometimes one at the top and one at the bottom depending how the fabric was cut. So, and usually on toppers, and actually I think on most fabric, the selvages are different widths. See, on one side is a little thicker than on the other side, so keep that in mind. However, the width, since I'm using 2 toppers from the same company in the same fabric, will be the same. So the beauty of sewing minky is that it kind of clings to itself, and that clinginess to itself works in your favor, because it's basically giving you some stability. But if you're a pinner, you can definitely go ahead and start pinning. I don't normally do that. It takes me like very little to sew a blanket because I don't pin. I just run it through the machine holding it with my hands. However, for our friends who are new to sewing minky and plush, I'll show you how to put a couple of pins at least. A lot of people put a million pins. I am not a big pinner. I do recommend clips instead of pins, always, for everything. Today is a rainy day. It's 66 right now in North Florida, so I figured it's the perfect weather to sew a plush blanket. So right now I'm adding pins about 10 inches apart-ish. I'm estimating it. Okay, and then I'll turn and I add my pins on the selvage, on the other selvage. Give your blanket a good shake. This way gravity works in your favor. And I pin. You notice that I don't cut. I don't like cutting minky or plush. It drives me crazy cutting minky or plush because it leaves a lot of furry, plushy residue in the air and everywhere I'm bringing it around, like my sewing machine, in my sewing machine, on the sewing machine. So I avoid cutting plush and minky like the plague. Before I do this, just wanted to make sure that they face the right direction, but not that it matters that much. As you can see, I'm letting gravity work. I'm not stretching anything because plush stretches both ways. It's very easy to get sucked into pulling one or the other, and you really don't want to do that because it will pucker and look not so pretty when you're done. So you want to make sure nothing stretches. See, I just let it lay as it wants, which means it doesn't stretch. And I already noticed that one topper is half an inch longer than the other one, and that's okay. If I were to stretch one of the topper to match the other one, when you turn the blanket, it would look puckered, so you don't want to do that. You want to remove the excess fabric. You don't want to stretch anything to fit when you sew a blanket. Okay, so I pinned both selvages. Now I'm going to pin the top, or whatever, bottom, one of the short sides. And this is the short side that has, that I placed my fabric and main correctly. I also see here that it wasn't cut super straight, this stripe. So I'm going to flip it to make sure that I pin it straight. Again, this is not something that I usually do. I just run it through the machine, but I know not everybody would be comfortable doing that with no pins or no clips. So you can see this was not cut super straight for strike off, and that's okay because that's what most of the time it happens. So when the other one is straight, I just make sure that the part that's wavy is outside of the seam allowance. You can definitely cut, like you can come here and cut all this excess, and I might do it just to show you why I don't like to cut, because I don't like the dust. But if you want, you can grab your ruler and you can grab your rotary cutter, and you can also, you need to also grab a lint roller. This is the key. If you cut minky, that is the key. So what you can do, if you want them to line up, you can definitely cut. Let's see, it starts fuzzing. I don't like that, like at all. And use the lint roller as quick as possible on the edge. See how much it comes out? And I just cut like 10 inches. That's why I don't like cutting. Look how much it comes out. So I use quite a few sheets of this lint roller if I decide that I want to start cutting minky. So I'm just showing you this side. I'm not cutting anymore. I love you guys, but I don't love you that much to have all this in my nose. So I just put a ruler and cut. And again, come quickly with the lint roller before it starts flying everywhere. And this is the side that was almost the same. On the bottom of the blanket, there is a discrepancy in length, but I will leave that as is. I just wanted you to show you that you can cut minky. I just prefer not to. See how much? And now it's all over the floor. And this is me whining. Okay. And now when I shake it, there will be more falling out. One tool that I found that's helpful in when you cut minky is this cordless scissors. I got this on Amazon, I think. It's really cute, and it's pink. It's loud. Here, it's super loud. But it works great, and it works with foam boards. I discovered that yesterday when I was cutting my kid's Halloween costume. Okay, so I have 3 sides pinned. See how it flies everywhere? You can't tell me that I don't love you. I wouldn't have cut this for anyone else. Alright, and now on the bottom, let me make sure. Again, I let gravity do its job. And I will show you my floor afterwards. Oh, it flies everywhere. Okay, so now I'm going to put a few pins on the bottom. Again, not stretching anything, making sure it lays nice and straight. And when we sew this part, we're going to leave an opening. And if you're not sure that you're going to remember to leave an opening, put a different marking. For example, I don't like pins, so I know when I reach the pins, it's time to stop. So I'm going to put an opening, and honestly, I don't feel like I need more than like 5 or 6 inches for this type of blankets. So I leave a pretty small opening there. And see, whatever was not straight here, I'm not cutting anymore. I don't want to do that. Okay. And just a couple of clips here and there. And that's it. I'm not going to do more than this. So now the whole blanket is clipped, right sides together. We just need to move to the machine and start sewing it all around, leaving this opening. So we are at the sewing machine. Couple of things before we start sewing. If you have an industrial machine, for any given reason, use it. Use it, it's fast. You only need a straight stitch for the blanket. Mine has a walking foot, which is amazing for sewing plush. Use it. It's not just for bags. My Juki is here for bag making, but it's not just for bags. It's the best thing for sewing blankets. Super fast, super quick, use it. Don't have one? No worries. Not everyone has one, I'm well aware of that. It's not a reason why you shouldn't sew yourself a custom plush blanket. 2 things you can use. 1, use your serger. Be mindful though, if you do use your serger, you need to cut any excess seam allowance that you haven't cut with your scissors earlier. Which means there will be stuff flying out. There will be dust. So if you do use your serger, clean it right after. Check your blades, because you're cutting a lot of fluff. Check your blades to see if you need to clean them after. And definitely change your needles after, so you have fresh needles for your next project. But it can be done with the serger. I've done it. I've sewn my last also pretty blankets. I had 2 from the last round. One, the Mickey Wizard one, and another stitch one, and I've sewn those on my serger, so it can be done. I had to change my blades afterwards and change my needles, but that's okay. It goes with the territory. We always change those, right? Those are perishable in the sewing world. So it can be done on a serger. If you want to ease your serger's life, cut them before. Cut your seam allowances, the excess selvage that I refuse to cut. So this white part, that's the selvage. So cut these white parts before you sew, if you sew with the serger. Or you can sew this with your sewing machine, just regularly. If your sewing machine gets finicky about sewing plush, it's probably because it is stretchy. So the same tips that I gave you and give you all the time when you sew knits on your sewing machine will apply to plush because it's stretchy. So use a walking foot if you can, use a ballpoint needle if you can, use the water-soluble stabilizer in between the presser feet and your like the needle plate and your project to help it glide easier. So all the tips for sewing knits on the sewing machine apply to sewing a plush blanket. So it can be done. Me sewing it on the industrial doesn't mean it's the only way to sew. It means it's the easy way, easiest out of all the methods I have in my sewing room, but it's definitely not the only way. So if you sew it on the sewing machine, I would recommend doing a longer stitch. I wouldn't do a 0.5 for sure. I would do a 3.5 or even a 4 for your stitch length. And you'll see that even when I sew in my industrial, I do a pretty long stitch. I do like a 6.5 length stitch. I also have my Tex 80 for bag making, and I'm too lazy to change it, but you can definitely use at like a Tex 45 or lower, even if you're using an industrial. I'm just too lazy to change it, and these are my blankets, so I don't really care. And they look pretty with the thicker thread, so definitely longer thread for that. The thread, as always, is from Wizardry, Stitchery and Crafts. Links to everything that I'm using, they'll be in the description, including my Oh So Pretty affiliate link. So we're going to start sewing where the needle is. For this industrial, I find that it likes plush to be with a looser tension. So I turn my tension dial towards the left to get a looser tension. I put the stitch length at about 5. And I will adjust it as needed. If I see that it starts puckering or it starts gathering my minky or my plush, that's when I know that I need to adjust the tensions a little bit, or the stitch length, or both. So far, it looks very good. You need to find that sweet spot. I've tried longer stitch length and they made gathers on the fabric, and you don't want that. I tried shorter ones and they didn't look very good. So I found the sweet spot to be around 6 for my industrial for the stitch length, and a pretty loose tension on the dial. So we're going to go all the way. You might need to adjust these settings when you sew the top parts or when you sew the side parts, because while it's a two-way stretch, it does stretch differently. When you reach the corner, you have two options. First of all, you need to check to make sure, if you haven't cut it, that you don't go past the selvage markings, like where the colors are, I showed you before these colors on the selvage, like that show the colors in the fabric. Like you will want to sew here, you want to sew on this where the print is. So if you have not cut it, if you cut it, you don't have that option. But if you don't want the fluff and you don't cut it, make sure you sew you don't go beyond that point. Another option, the two options that I was telling you about were to have a corner that it's like a box, or if you want an easier one, you can go around the corner and make it a slightly round corner. This way you don't have to worry about, and this is what I will do. I just go round slowly and I guide my fabric so it rounds it a little bit. This way I don't have to worry about having a perfectly pointy corner. Save yourself that hassle. So right now I see that for my fabric to not catch any of the selvage info, I need to be at about 2¼ inch. Yeah, about 2¼ 2 and 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. So a big seam allowance. So what I do, I take my magnetic marker, or you can just put a strip of washi tape. So I know I don't deviate from that seam allowance. So on this side I need a 2 3/8 seam allowance to make sure that I include the selvage inside the blanket and it doesn't show on the outside. Again, if you cut that part, then you won't have this issue. And see, now I see it gathering a little bit. See, I changed the sides of my stitching, so it now it goes along the selvage, not perpendicular. So you need to adjust whatever tensions to make sure that you don't get puckers and it sews beautifully straight. Guide your blanket following the seam that you put there. And obviously remove your pins or your clips as you go. I usually don't have anything to remove because I just don't have them. But I know a lot of people like to have a lot of pins. It gives them comfort and it makes the job easier for most of you. I'm used to doing this without, so it's for me, it's very weird. I know, with all the pins, they're getting in my way. But if you've never sewn, like I said, if you've never sewn plush or minky before, definitely add a lot of pins. It will help you love the process. And then the more blankets you sew, the less pins you'll be adding. Our blanket stash is huge. But everyone in my house loves a double plush. Like a plush on the front and plush on the back blanket, because it's heavy. And you get that cozy minky, while still just as pretty, it's much lighter weight, so it's great for more summery, although I do use my plush blankets in the summer too. So I love the double plush because it gives you that heaviness, that comfort heaviness that we all need regardless of age, if you ask me. I love it. It calms me. I use one at night, or actually two at night. Even though I'm not cold and it's hot most of the time, it gives me that weight, you know, that's comforting, that you don't get with minky or like woven quilts or whatnot. My magnet moved a little bit, so I'm just double checking now that it's in the right spot, so the sides are straight. And again, usually it takes me less than 20 minutes for this, but now I'm chatting and I'm talking with you, so it takes longer, and it's okay. It's absolutely okay. It doesn't have to take you 20 minutes to sew a blanket. We're also doing it for fun, right? And enjoying the process. Okay, so now I got to the other corner and I'm going to slowly round it out. Okay. And I'm double checking that I didn't catch any of the like white part in the seam allowance. So on this is the bottom that was like super straight. So I used like a ½ inch seam allowance on this one because both raw edges are aligned. This was the side that had both raw edges aligned. So this goes super fast. So when I get to the other corner, again, round the corner and make sure that you find that you place, when you turn, you have that 2½ inch seam allowance. Well, 2½ in my case, because this is what it is on this fabric. That obviously may vary from fabric to fabric. Because you don't want to catch the white part in your blanket. Again, if you cut it, you don't have that issue. But you will have the issue of all the fluff in the air. And just like any knit sew, once you give it a good steam press, it will remove some of the waviness from stitching stretch fabric. Keep in mind when you do press it that you should probably use a pressing cloth, but if you're not, use a very low temperature. Minky and Plush are polyester bases, which means they melt. So if you put a high temperature on your iron, expect melting to happen, and you don't want to have worked so much and then have it all melt on you. So keep that in mind. Okay, we're getting close to the last corner here. And again, I'm going to go ahead and round it a little bit. Go slow when you round it, and then go ahead and stitch all the way to that pin. Remember, because this is the last of the edges, back stitch where the pin is, and you are done. Now what you have to do to make it look a little nicer on the inside, even though we hate cutting, before you turn it, I don't cut. See, this is the excess selvage. I don't cut that. I leave that in the blanket because I don't mind it. What I do tend to cut is the corners a little bit, so it removes some of the bulk. Again, have your lint roller handy when you go cut it, and I'll be right back to turn it with you and show you how we top stitch it. Okay. So I rounded the corners. Here you can see how I just cut the excess just on the corner. So now through the opening that we left, we're going to turn the blanket simply by putting our hand inside and just turning it. Super, super easy. So when I go to top stitch right now, I am not going to pin anything. I've done already as much spinning as I wanted to do for today. Just make sure you push your corners out and feel with your hand. See, when you push your corner out, right here. And we're going to top stitch, and I top stitch about 1/2 inch away from the edge. I start on one side and I do top stitch all around. If you don't want to top stitch, you don't have to, but you do have to close that opening one way or another. So either you're top stitching or you're doing it the right way and you do a lather stitch. So pick a side that you want to start top stitching. I don't have a preference because I'm using 2 toppers, so for me they're both the right side. And I'll start I don't start at the corner, I start a little lower. And if you see that you have too much bulk in the corner, you can definitely go ahead and snip some of the excess fabric off. I don't, because I hate cutting minky. And these are my blankets, so I don't stress that much. If I were to do them for sale, like as a business, I would. But these are my blankets. I sew them for fun. So I go all around right now. When I get the opening, like I am right now, I just put the seam allowance inside and close my blanket with the top stitching. Super, super easy. Right now when you top stitch, you're sewing through 4 layers of fluff. So if you do that on your sewing machine, be cautious of that. If you're using your cover stitch, make sure that you adjust the tensions if it doesn't do it automatically for you. Wow, this print is so stunning. It pops like crazy nice. And if it's not perfect, it's okay too. Remember that. You've sewn yourself a plush blanket by yourself with the fabric that you want, a blanket that no one else has. Keep that in mind. Don't be too hard on yourself. When you wrap yourself in this goodness on a cozy night with the fireplace or just windows open so it's breezy, you won't care if the top stitching is not perfectly straight. You won't care if the bottom is not exactly straight, or if you see a small line on the side from the selvage. Like, you don't want to see the whole white, I get it, but if it happened and in one spot you see a sliver of the selvage, it won't make a difference. When you will be wrapped in this goodness on a cozy night. Just wanted to make sure I still have a bobbin, because this machine doesn't tell me that I'm running out of bobbin, and I see it sometimes after 10 minutes of sewing. And I think that's what it was trying to tell me right now. I'm running out of bobbin. Yep. So let me go ahead and change my bobbin. So, oh, it wasn't. I still have a little bit. So I was saying, yeah, when you are wrapped around in this coziness at night, or reading a book, you won't care about the little things. So don't stress about the little things right now either. Make the process enjoyable. We all strive for perfection, right? Because it's human nature. But if it doesn't happen, especially on your first tries, that's okay. The blanket will still be pretty. Nobody's gonna know. And I'm gonna sound like a TikToker now. They're not gonna know if there's any minor things happening that make it less than perfect. So don't stress about unnecessary stuff. Enjoy the process of making it as much as you'll be enjoying the finished product. Do you listen to anything when you sew? I usually, when I don't film, obviously, because the last thing I want to do is any copyright infringement on my account. I listen to audiobooks and music. It's relaxing. I do have a TV in here, so sometimes sometimes it will let me change the bobbin because there's something wrong with the bobbin. Sometimes I will turn on the TV and have something playing in the background, but most of the time I listen to audiobooks. Oh, I know what it is. What the problem was. And see, it doesn't have to be fully perfect. Every little piece of the sewing steps. Like right now, something was going cuckoo with my bobbin. No big deal. It's absolutely normal. Happens to everyone. And that's why I'm not going to cut this part on editing. I tend to not cut a lot of things on editing unless there's like a screaming child in the background or stuff like that. Because stuff happens to all of us, and having a perfectly perfect sewn thing with a perfect ambience and perfect lighting all the time and perfect everything is not realistic, if you ask me. And we all know there's a lot of things happening in editing. Okay, much better. It kept acting weird, the bobbin thread, and I finally figured out why. See, on this side, I definitely caught some of that salvage in the blanket. I wasn't paying attention and I think my magnet moved. I could turn it back out and restitch where I made that error and it would be okay. But it's my blanket. It's also okay for me to just leave it as is and get the extra half an inch of coziness on the side. I mean, if my kids have these blankets without any sewing on them, I'm not gonna be above using a blanket that has a half an inch error on like a 5-inch part. I'll show it to you. We all love the softness of plush in this house, but we also live in Florida, so sometimes my kids gravitate towards these blankets for the softness, but they don't want the heaviness and the thickness, so they just would use one layer. And I told you, I don't even hem it. It's like, it comes from the fabric host as is. It goes in the wash, and then it goes straight on their bed. And it doesn't, oops, I ran out of bobbin. Now I ran out of bobbin. It doesn't fray or anything. And I feel like it doesn't leave fluff if you don't cut it. Once you cut it, that's when all hell breaks loose. Let's do gold, because I don't have white anymore. But I do have some gold, so I will do that. And of course, you might want to match your bobbins, but like I said, it's my blanket. I don't care to put white on a different bobbin right now. If I had more, I would have used white, but now I have gold, and gold is pretty. Okay, we're almost at the end. This is it. You can give it a press if you want. afterwards. Or you can give it a wash and it will also straighten everything in the wash. Any waviness from the heat of the washing machine. We made it to the last, yeah, we made it to the last edge. Don't slide off. It is heavy. But it's so pretty. It is so pretty. The colors on this print are insanely nice. I will need to get some bamboo out of it because this print is so good for Festival of the Arts, which is usually in February at Epcot. This would be absolutely amazing for that. Okay, some top stitching because I made it to the beginning. Okay, I had a thread here that I needed to snip. And that's it. The blanket is done. Again, this video is long because I stayed and chatted. Usually it takes a lot less after you've made a few of them. This will be out a little bit, like this, and show you this gorgeousness. Oh, here, see? This is the part that I was saying that I left some white. See, here where my fingers are, and that's okay. Shh, nobody's gonna know. Oh, this is so gorgeous. Oh, I love it. So this is one side and this is the other side. Can't tell me that two toppers don't make the most beautiful blanket ever. I adore it. The colors are insane. Insane. On this, look at these details. Gorgeous. Thank you so much for spending some time of your day with me, and for chatting, and for watching, and for subscribing and liking. And let me know in the comments what kind of videos you would like me to do, because I am all for you sewing with me. Anything that I might be sewing on a daily basis. Talk to you soon. Bye.